Hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar, Increasing Customer Engagement to Decrease Resolution Times. Thank you all very much to all 760 of you for joining us today. I'm Scott Cormack, Global Event Director here at the Incite Group, which is part of the wider Reuters Events family. I'll keep the introduction brief as we have a packed panel of superb speakers today who are eager to dive into this discussion. We have some close friends of the Incite Group joining us today, as well as some new faces to welcome to our community. So bear with me while I introduce them all to you. First up on the panel, we have fellow Brit Fiona Blakesley, Director of Customer Care at Intuit. Fiona brings a vast experience gathered from over 20 years in the customer care industry, and she is currently leading support in North America and Canada within Intuit's professional tax group. Then we have Colin Crowley, Vice President of Customer Experience at Freshly. Colin is a good friend of us here at the Incite Group, lending his expertise to our webinar lineups on previous occasions. His leadership has allowed Freshly to boast best-in-class standard response times, making his insights invaluable for our discussion today. Third up on the batting order, we have Erin Sheehan, Senior Director of Guest Experience at the San Diego Padres. Erin's 11 years working in the guest experiences and services arm of the sports industry means that she can offer crucial insights into how the ballpark is becoming a trailblazer in the CS space. And then rounding off of our panel today, we have Craig Dunn, CRO of today's sponsor, First Orion, whose solutions make the heroic mission of getting people to answer the phones easy once again. Alongside them today is Prabh Singh, Operations Manager at First Orion's partner Keno. For those of you who don't know, Keno is #1 car wash app in the UAE. And then finally, I would like to welcome back a man who has become synonymous with Incite Group webinars by now, Nicholas Zeisler, Principal at Zeisler Consulting and former Director of CX at HP, joining us as the moderator of today's webinar. Just before we kick things off, I would like to highlight some quick pieces of housekeeping. There are over 760 of you registered for the webinar today from a host of different countries and exciting brands such as UPS, Marriott International, Fender Musical Instruments, MasterCard, Foot Locker, AT&T, and many others that would take me too long to list. I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar. It's really great to have all of your expertise joining us today. In addition to this, please do let us know in the chat function that you should see on your screens if you have any questions or even any feedback or opinions. We welcome all of your interaction and we will incorporate those throughout the webinar today. Finally, today's webinar will be recorded, so do keep an eye out for that coming into your inboxes in the next few days. But that's enough from me. I'll hand over to you now, Nicholas, and why don't you kick this discussion off?
Great, Scott. Thanks. I appreciate it. It's great to be back again. I've never been synonymous before, so thanks so much. We have got such a large panel and already see a couple hundred folks interacting with us and dialed in. So thanks so much to everybody for being here. We will certainly be integrating the questions that come through on the chat box, but without much more delay, let's just get right into the questions since we have so many folks here today. Fiona, it's good to talk to you again. First question goes to you, where at Intuit, y'all are leveraging technology to shift a lot of the incidents that you would get to self-service. This is certainly helping with resources, I imagine, but you're also experiencing new ways of looking at some metrics. You and I were discussing this the other day. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, good morning, Nicholas, and good morning or afternoon to everyone. Yeah, ultimately, our focus is really about getting customers what they need, getting the answers they need, in a highly personalized way and getting it to them within their workflow. My area of focus is leading operations and the digital experience within our professional tax group. And when you think about professional tax preparers as our key customer group, now more than ever, with the extension to the deadline, they're very time crunched, and they typically monetize on their time. So what we've been doing is using new technologies to improve our digital experience, like chatbots, enhancing community support, and also providing kind of resolution in the workflow for account type interactions. And so what that means is we've been having to look at metrics holistically across both the live and the digital experiences. And what we've seen is that as we automate these simpler transactional contact types, what remains for our experts is really those most complex and involved interactions. So although we've seen this overall reduction in total contacts, we have seen an increase in AHT as a result of this complexity. And so in order to get to this kind of holistic view, we look at containment within our digital experience. We look at our contact rate. So looking at our total universe of contacts and how many contacts we get versus the customers logging in. So ultimately, really, it's about data, Nicholas. It's about, understanding our customers, deepening the relationship, and also driving decisions based on that holistic data.
Yeah, I'd say when you talk about holistic, what I also hear in there is kind of like team, right? Because if I'm an individual agent, I'm going to be handling more complex issues. So therefore my AHT may come up a bit, right? But when I look across the entire team, look what we're delivering for our customers, right? We're overall, because so many of them can be self-healed and so forth, they're spending less time getting their issue resolved, right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Yeah, it's that holistic view that's key, rather than just looking at, what, dare I say, is maybe a hygiene metric around something like AHT.
Yeah, awesome. Let's go around the horn here and see what other folks have to say about it. Colin, what do you find there at Freshly, or maybe you're not necessarily pushing that yet, but what are your thoughts on what Fiona was just saying?
No, I think it's very, very interesting, and I confess that in terms of our brand model here at Freshly, we haven't put a tremendous degree of emphasis on average handle time, except in certain extreme circumstances. And a lot of that has to do with kind of how we branded ourselves to customers. We're a healthy prepared meal service. So as a result of that, we deal with a product that's very intimate to people's lives and has a direct impact on their well-being, namely their health. So for that reason, we really brand our customer service interactions to be very personalized, and really want to invest in conversations we have with clients so they feel a sense of comfort in contacting us, because they've kind of invited our product into their lifestyle in pretty intimate ways. For that reason, historically, as we change up our experience, we've not really been tremendously focused on average handle time, except in extreme circumstances. And we do look at agent activity when it comes to across various channels, phone, chat, email, etc., where we have a metric called a violation percentage, where we care about certain egregious circumstances, where if you're having a pattern of, like, your talk time, for instance, going above a certain degree that we consider egregious, and more than that represents more than, let's say, 10% of your phone calls, and in that particular case, we'll step back to see what's going on there. But aside from that, trying to take care of the outliers in some sane way, we have not enforced very stringent standards in average handle time, and we've kind of given agents the freedom as much as possible to be able to engage with customers on a very personal level.
Awesome, that's great, Colin. Sounds like that allows then your agents to interact more directly and more personally then really with your customers, rather than just, hey, I'm ticking a box and getting getting this done and move on to the next step, right? That's great.
Yeah,
Aaron,
and we were a subscription service, definitely long term, as like a retention strategy. So yeah, we use our QA program as well to kind of enforce certain forms of interaction that encourage conversations as opposed to just moments.
Yeah, great point about subscription model then lending itself to more of a relationship type of a thing there with your customers. So Aaron, want to talk about those interactions from that personal standpoint. We're going to get to that because I've got a great question for you coming up. But I wonder if you, from that contact center perspective, what are your thoughts on what Colin and Fiona are saying about shifting the perspective and the metrics from more of a, hey, this call went too long, or your calls are going too long as a contact center agent, as opposed to, hey, this is how great we're interacting with our customers?
Yeah, no, I think it's really interesting because this is something that crosses over industries, and obviously no customer or fan in my case really wants to spend a lot of time out of their valuable days, except for if we're talking about Padres baseball, then they would like to talk to us all day long. But, usually in my case, if they're calling, they either have a problem with their tickets or they had an experience, good or bad. And so we do want to solve that. And so our ticket sales agents that are talking to the guests on the phone, they have their CRM system, and a lot of what we go over is don't have them go through that gauntlet of repeating information that we should already know. And I love what Fiona said about taking a holistic approach, because realistically, everyone on our team literally should be on the same page and have access to that information on our customers. So we should know, what they do, and if they came to the game, or if they gave their tickets away to a client, or what exactly happened, and not have to really ask those repeated questions that annoy our guests.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't mind the mixed sports metaphor, it's really an own goal if you're not doing that, right? You have all the information as an entity, as in your case, for example, as the Padres, that you wouldn't be sharing it among the silos within your organization is really just punching yourself, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I should know in my department of guest experience and operations, realistically, who our season ticket members are, and have access via our technology if they call, or if in person they have an experience at the game. And if we don't, to use another sports analogy, we've really dropped the ball. And it's like two people on our team, even in different departments, aren't talking to each other. And that is the ultimate fail on our side.
Yeah, you bet. All right, Aaron. Thanks. Craig, what do you have to say about this? I know that you're first Orion, you have clients a lot across a lot of industries and so forth. What are you hearing from them about this sort of holistic approach that Fiona's been talking about average handle time being brought down? Does it go up compared to how long it's taking your customers to resolve their situations?
Yeah, first of all, welcome to all the other panelists and everyone on the webinar. I think these are all great issues, right? Fiona talking about and all of that waterfall, how do you really address the most complex involved problems? Personalization from Colin, shorter times to talk, that's important, but you don't want to lose the warmth and humanity in the conversation. And then it's great to let agents know all this information about your consumers. How do you let the consumer know that you know that about them? So it probably helps everyone on the phone, Nicholas, for me to maybe set this up. First, Orion has a technology that enables a brand to present rich graphics for their brand and the intent of the call to a consumer when their phone rings. So when that phone rings, it's addressable to the individual consumer and to the purpose of the call. Does a couple of big things. One, it gives the consumer enough information to decide if they want to answer the phone. And I think we all know we don't answer phones anymore unless we have enough information to trust who's calling us. And what we found is when our technology gets turned on, up to 300% more people answer the phone. And that's because you've communicated to them who you are and even down to the addressable issue of why you're calling. So Aaron might call them and actually say, Tom, I'm calling about your ticket request. It could also say, Tom, I'm calling about your, some other issue. So that consumer knows you know them, and they also know that you're trying to reach them. So those two big things happen. It lets the customer answer the call, and it opens up this most effective channel of communication where you can use human charisma and voice to communicate, and all of that together can reduce time. And I'll just throw out one example. We had a large telecom customer, very good customer service, all of the things we're talking about they had in place. But they had this issue, a consumer might call in and actually ask to be called. And when they got called back, even in a 5 or 10 minute window, only 30% of the people answered that call. They've asked for help, they're getting that call back, they're just not answering. When we turned this technology on, over 80% of the people answered the call. And without that, the customer thought they didn't call me back and they don't care, or even worse, they called back and repeated that process. So it's a new piece of technology that can fit into this holistic approach and really kind of wake up this channel that a lot of us have been abandoning of voice. And it really works well to things like Fiona brought up. When a problem is complex and it's involved, you want to use the most effective channel of communication to get that resolution back and forth and deal with the complexity. And talking is just a great way to do that.
Yeah, and you have to your point, that technology allows that connection to be made in the first place so that you can talk. I'd like to bring Prab in here. I know that they're a partner of yours, they're a client of yours at Kino. Prab, why don't you tell us a little bit about how Craig's technology is working for you guys out there in the UAE?
First of all, welcome to all the panelists and attendees. So coming to the point that me as an operations guy, we were really having problems with the company that where customers just did not pick up the call when the driver used to, or the ninja, as we call them, goes to service the car. So like on an average, our ninjas was spending, like 10 to 15 minutes per order chasing customers just for them, just so that they could inform them that they're here and for them to open the car from the window. So with Engage, that has really helped us because we had like a 59% increase in the Ninja calls being answered. So whenever Ninja is there, they already know that Kino is calling, so that they can just help the Ninja wherever required. And this actually helped us save those 10-15 minutes per order. So if you look at the full day, we had like 8 orders, so we save around 1.5 to 2 hours in service time each day. Also, it actually improved our last mile cost for the drivers, and so leading to more washes being completed in a day. And moreover, what I feel that because obviously in UAE there's like a lot of, especially these days, it's so hot. So those 10-15 minutes what we are saving for our employees, for our ninjas who are going to service the cars. So it boosts their morale that the company is doing as much as possible for us to just like complete this order and just go on with it. And yeah, so and also like during, especially these times during COVID-19 where we have to have a contact free wash, as we may call it. So this is really helping us so that they know that okay, Kino is calling, and so that's that. And if I add to the resolution time, so it has actually helped us decrease the resolution time as well. That sometimes if there's a complaint, we have to chase the customer, and like there's like sometimes they pick up the call, sometimes they don't. So when they know that Kino is calling, so they know okay, they want to answer and they want to talk, so we have like more meaningful conversations. And yeah, so it's like the decrease in resolution time.
Yeah, probably in your business model, there's a lot of interaction person to person, surely, because someone's coming to my residence or to my business to wash my car, and I need to know that that person's arrived. And so I think
Exactly.
what Craig and First Orion have got there is this blend of technology that actually helps accentuate that personal interaction. Craig, was that how you'd pitch it?
Yeah, well, it's one of the ways we pitch it, and Prob didn't directly address this, but remember, you're making a call and you're getting to address the customer visually even before they start talking. So one of the things that Prob and Kino has found is sometimes people don't pick up that call. They simply walk out the door and hand you the keys because they have all of the communication as well visually. So that chance to brand and communicate and give the customer a choice of the pick up or not, even if they don't pick up that phone, they just got a rich branded experience where you're telling them we're here to help you. So although we think of it as a voice technology, it's just as much of a visual communication, and we're all aware that our brain processes that visual communication so much faster than voice, but it's a perfect setup. So Prab shared with me that often they call people and they skip the whole process of, this is who's calling Kino, this is my name, this is why I'm calling. The customer actually picks up the phone and says, are you here? Because they've got all of this visual information before they start talking.
Yeah, it's really kind of a, if I could steal Fiona's word there from earlier, it's kind of a holistic thing. You're appealing to all of the senses, and that's really what it's all about when we talk about bringing things back to kind of a human perspective. And it's really cool that you're leveraging technology to bring that human interaction back together again. So that's really awesome. Want to remind everybody that, and we've got a few questions coming into the question box here. So I encourage people who are attending here to pop your questions in there. I'm going to get to one of those in a second, but first I want to get back to this link between human and technology here. And Colin, I want to come back to you, because over at Freshly, you're leveraging RPA, robotic process automation, for some of those processes. What can you tell us about that and how that kind of relates to that, the time sensitivity of some of the needs of your customers, and how it helps you kind of connect with them in a human level there?
Yeah, we've been involved in the RPA space for a little while now. We started it focusing on one specific type of issue that was causing an increase in our email response times quite significantly. I mentioned before that we're a subscription service, and we ship healthy prepared meals to customers on a weekly basis. So as a subscription, we renew weekly, and you can edit your menu for your next order weekly, and so on and so forth. So we have this weekly deadline by which you have to make any changes to your upcoming order, and on that deadline we charge you for that order, and we program it into our system and things of that nature. And one thing which is of course not a subscription service is that sometimes people either don't know upon sign up that you are a subscription service, or in our particular case, even though people often know and comprehend that, they're not necessarily expecting the turnaround to be on a weekly basis, because that's very quick. So you kind of have to be on top of it. And we have customers who miss their deadline, and maybe they're going to be away next week and they can't receive meals, and they're trying to cancel an order for which they've been charged. So we find these instances where every single day around the same period of time, when we go and do a batch charge of customers, we have all these contacts coming in over phone, chat, email, etc., with people saying, oh no, I'm going to be away next week, so please can you cancel my order? And they're all coming in together. So it's creating a problem in those particular cases, because you have a bunch of people who are nervous they've been charged, not knowing how quickly and easily we can accommodate them. So they're nervous. And then of course, because you have this inflow of contacts, then all the other issues that are coming in that actually may be more important, quote unquote, because they're more time sensitive, or they involve a more serious issue that requires investigation, then now those are going to take longer to get to from agents. They're dealing with all these order cancellation requests. So we were trying to find a way to streamline the process so that we can go ahead and accommodate those customers who are requesting order cancellation in as quick a manner as possible, so we're not seeing this increase in response times the same time every single day in the late afternoon. We ultimately ended up partnering with a company to create a bot that exists in our CRM platform. We use Zendesk. And the bot goes through the process of canceling an order for an agent. So it is agent activated. So an email comes in, or a chat, because it was built also for email, chat, and phone. And the agent inputs minimal information. So they do have to input the customer's email address, which is linked to their subscription in our back-end order management system. And there are a few other things they can choose to customize the experience, but at its minimum, all they do is put in the email address, and then they click a button, and the bot runs in the background and takes something which is approximately 40 clicks on a normal day and reduces it to 2 clicks for the agent. And that's going through the whole process of canceling the order, logging an appropriate issue, because we have an internal issue log system, and refunding the customer as well, and emailing them. So responding to their email if they send an email. So in that one click, the agent is essentially able to deal with the issue. And that enabled our response times for those particular contacts to go down. But even especially, we just talking about average handle times, the average handle time for those particular tickets went down from approximately 6 minutes to about a minute and a half, if not less. So it's a pretty dramatic drop. And again, very impactful considering how many of these tickets are coming in around the same period of time. We also built the technology so there's a certain degree of flexibility in it, because one of the problems with technology, of course, is that it can be designed in a very blocky way where it removes the ability for human initiative. And we discovered that we had to build in certain nuances to the technology. So there are some cases where an agent, they don't want the default email to be sent to customers, because maybe the customer is very nervous that they were charged and they sense the customer needs a little bit of extra TLC. So when agents fill out the little form, they have the ability to tell the bot, don't send the email. I'll take care of that. So I can make sure the customer gets the type of answers they need. We also built on another aspect to the bot too, where agents can just use a drop-down menu to select if the customer also wants to cancel their subscription at the same time they're canceling their order. So to expand the number of cases where the bot is relevant. I think the thing that customization is also key, because without it, it would restrict, and did restrict early on, the number of instances where agents were able to take advantage of the technology.
That's great, Colin. That's one button resolution. That's reduced resolution time right there. But then also having that flexibility to personalize it customer to customer makes that bridge between the technology and also the human interaction as well. I love it. That's great. Hey, let's go to some questions that we have up here in the question box. Bevan Kalo asks, and Fiona, I'm going to start with you on this because I think it probably comes up a little bit from the discussion we were having about the work that y'all are doing over Intuit. And Bevan asks, how have you convinced customers to buy into using AI service for simpler cases? And I guess that's moving kind of more to self-healing. How do you get them to appreciate if they prefer human contact, but we're having the agents focusing on more involved questions? How do you drive that to your customers? Or maybe you're not finding that and maybe they're just asking for it.
Yeah, and that's a really good question, and one we kind of think about a lot internally. I think part of the short answer is the live experience is there and it's available for our customers. But I think the way that we're changing behavior for some, and I would say it's only certain cohorts, is really by providing that answer in the workflow, so kind of at their fingertips. A lot of professional tax preparers is they may even have a client in front of them while they're engaging with us. And so ultimately, if we can resolve it in the moment, they're much less likely to call. But it has to be the right answer. It has to be, at their fingertips within the workflow. And as I mentioned, I think what we've seen is those more transactional account type contacts are where we've had a lot of success with, probably 30% year-over-year reduction. Those more complex interactions, we're still seeing a bias for, a live interaction because customers are looking for a level of reassurance about the accuracy of their actions.
Sure. Yeah, I guess what it comes down to, and this is something that we say all the time, is that it's about meeting the customers where they are. And a lot of times I think questions are posed like, well, how do you move customers from one to another channel? And maybe the question is more, well, how can you develop the work that you're doing in a dynamic way that allows customers kind of decide for themselves? Fiona, is that kind of where you'd go with that?
Yeah, absolutely. And something that feels natural, like I say, within their workflow. So, if you can, what we found is almost customers don't perceive that as customer care or customer success. They just perceive it as almost part of the product. So if they can hover over something, for example, and get the answer that they're looking for, they're much less likely to contact us.
Yeah. I'd like to open this question up to the rest of the panel too, and I want to infuse also the question that Maya asks in the question box, asking in 2020, basically, where do we think things are going as far as channel preference goes?
I'll be happy to weigh in on that. This is Craig. Something that Fiona just said, again, talking about the complexity sometimes of problems and consumers are looking for reassurance. And I'll just give you an example. We had a large insurance company that when it was going to be a really bad result for a consumer, and the use case was a policy lapsing.
Fiona, why don't we wrap up here, and then I'll send it around the horn too and see what the other panelists have to say.
I'm sorry, can you hear me on the call?
Yeah, hey there, Craig. Sorry,
yes,
I think I was having some sort of connection issues.
Yeah, got it. I was just saying, and jump in if my voice goes away again, but Fiona was speaking to the consumers wanting reassurance. And when we talk about where this is going, when you can respond to the consumers' express preference of channel, that's part of giving them that reassurance. And that's really important on complex issues. And I was just, proffering a use case that we've seen with a large insurance company. One of the worst things in that field that can happen to a customer is having a policy lapse without their knowledge. It can create a lot of bad results for them. And because of that, this insurance company was often calling a consumer as many as 30 times if they couldn't connect with them. So that was a bad experience in itself. But also, turning on a technology that connected them helped resolve the issue. But I will tell you where it's going. Even with our technology, we have the ability to visually rich experience when the call's made. It also has the ability, a new feature to where a consumer actually, as the phone's ringing, can push a button and choose to chat instead of talk. And then also has the ability to leave behind a rich display of the call happening actually on their phone, so that if they do miss it, they still have that experience. But this concept of consumer preferences is very huge. And that's one of the things that we in our roadmap are trying to address more and more every day. It's the best way to reassure a customer that you're listening to them.
Awesome. So I guess it goes back again to meeting customers where they are and understanding what channel they'd prefer. Let's go ahead, Colin. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I entirely agree. I mean, I think it really comes down to trusting the customer, that the customer understands the most efficient way to contact you about an issue based on what they need. Because sometimes it's easy to get into the mindset of sort of declaring from on down what the most efficient channels are. And you have some companies who will strategically not invest in certain channels, like maybe phones, because they're seen as being too expensive or too cumbersome. But if you really trust the customer, you'll end up discovering, in the vast majority of cases, so maybe like 85%, 90% or so, that they're making a good judgment in terms of how they need to get answers and what the best way is to do that. Because at the end of the day, of course, no customer wants to spend more time on a call or a chat or an email than they have to, any more than any of us want an agent to have to spend more time on a call or a chat or an email than they have to. I think that actually folds into the other question about driving people towards some of these self-help solutions, because I know I've seen a lot of different types of reporting on this, but I think also as a Harvard Business Review study found that about 80% of consumers voluntarily choose self-help options first if they can, if they're presented to them. And we've seen that also in our experience at Freshly, when we premiered our first low-level chatbot, where we were kind of scared of making customers feel they were frozen out of contacting an agent. So while the chatbot existed and they could ask a question to it, we also made sure it was right in their face that you just click on this and you can go to an agent. And we discovered that we had like 78%. It's almost exactly the same as the Harvard Business Review figure. Chose to ask their question through the chatbot first, even though many of those ended up taking that to an agent ultimately. So I think that really speaks to how customers just naturally gravitate towards what they feel is a more efficient channel, and following them where they go makes a lot of sense for a business.
Yeah, for sure. Following them where they go. I think that's the theme here. And Aaron, I'm going to turn it to you too. I'm going to say, doesn't it seem that we as CX professionals and practitioners are often trying to answer maybe the wrong question? We try to answer the question of what's the proper channel, and instead it should be, how do we manage our operations in such a way that it doesn't matter which channel, rather than trying to funnel it from our end.
Yeah, I mean, in my world, and I love hearing that everyone is trying to essentially streamline the service for both our end users, but also for your agents, or in my world, our frontline staff. And how we do that is we have to connect the dots. So if a guest is coming to a baseball game and they would like to talk to someone in person, how do we empower the frontline staff to also decipher what is important to then get back? What information is it to get back, so we can input it into the CRM system, and that will then empower our ticket sales agents, who are then picking up the phone and talking to that same customer in a week. So I think it's connecting the dots, but also empowering your frontline staff to use that information and make a personalized touch. Our jobs, and I'm hearing this a lot across the panel, is to make their jobs easier so that they can focus on maintaining and making those memorable moments or relationships and increasing, customer satisfaction or those experiences.
Yeah, Aaron, I wonder if we could tie out on that just a little bit. If you could share with me a bit about that technology that you're using, because a lot of the conversation so far today has been about these contact center events and so forth, but you've got contact center folks and folks that are selling tickets and so forth. And then I, as a fan, I show up and I'm expecting an in-person experience when I get there, but that needs that handoff of information from when I was speaking to the contact center agent. So tell us how you're doing that.
Right. And it's difficult, right, to engage and empower your frontline staff without using technology just because of time and, the rapid, in my world, the game or the event season creeps up, and just the volume of frontline staff that we hire every game. But we use a device called 24/7 ISS, and historically it's been used to report incidents or negative situations, right? But it also, and we've been engaging with them to use it as an opportunity for two-way communication with our ushers or with our stewards or our frontline staff or our servers. So if a full-time employee that knows a season ticket member when his birthday is, and he knows that season ticket member is coming to the game on his birthday, we can seamlessly get that information to the usher that's going to be working in his section or to the server that's going to be working in his suite, and they can know what his favorite cupcake is and have that ready to deliver to that season ticket member when they get there. And then vice versa, if the usher learns that it's his birthday and the ticket agent didn't know, then how do we get that information? They use the same device to simply input and tie it to the ticket that, hey, I learned it's Aaron's birthday on August 1st. And so then the next time the full-time employee that's trying to renew his season tickets logs into the CRM system, he sees, oh, I know when it's his birthday. I'm going to give him a call or email or, social media shout out with his favorite player on his birthday. So it's personalizing the experience, but empowering your frontline staff with the information and also asking them to gather the information in a meaningful way to share.
That's great, Aaron, because having all that information doesn't do you any good if you're not going to use it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. While I got you, Aaron, I want to pose a question that we got from Jim in the question box online here, asking if you have recommendations for handling changes to customer bookings. This is kind of like off topic a little bit, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this because Jim is in the hotel industry, and we have folks that have to postpone or rearrange or make changes, looking for new processes to help with bookings at scale when people have to make changes. Have you got thoughts on that?
As someone who's currently planning their wedding in the middle of this situation and doing hotel bookings, I think as a consumer, the flexibility, it's the same kind of process for a customer service experience is, they'll appreciate the flexibility, and on the back end, whatever technology or whatever maneuvering you have to do for your operations, it will be well received on the consumer's side.
Surely, yeah. Okay, let's shift gears now. Let's get back to Craig talking about first to Orion here. There's an important part of your technology that assists the agent customer interaction and allows for more of that personal human interaction that we've been talking about. Let's talk a bit more about that, and maybe bring Prop back in too, and talk about how he's leveraging that over at Keynote.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas. I'll have to say this: Aaron has me wanting to go to a baseball game, and I know we had a worldwide audience here, so whether it's cricket or soccer, I know we're all wanting to get back to that. But I can even speak to something Aaron just mentioned. Having the ability, let's say you reach out to a customer and it says, "Tom, calling about your birthday visit," right? Having that addressable technology is important, but when I think of Keynote, especially, you guys may have picked up earlier that Prab was saying they call their customer service people who are out in the field performing service ninjas. The whole idea is that we're going to be fast, and we're going to be expert. And we've actually incorporated this technology into their app. And so for any business that's interacting with their consumers on an app, it's just normal to go to channels of communication like texting or in-app communications. And when they actually get that call from Kino, it's not in the app. It's a native call experience, but it puts both of those together. So what Kino has found is having both of those channels and the consumer being able to respond back to this question of choosing the channel. They can see that call and not take it, but no, Kino's trying to reach them and immediately go into the app as well. But I don't want to speak too much for Prob, but it's been very exciting to take this technology and marry it to the technology they already had and get the kind of results that they're seeing with their consumers.
Exactly.
Right.
Just to add, yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to invite you to go ahead, Prob.
Perfect. So just to add what Craig just said, so it was actually a pain point for us when customers did not, and calling did not answer the phone, and calling is our primary channel for reaching them, because our staff is out there, like they're on the field, and in real time they have to contact the customers and vice versa. So there's addressable technology that, okay, Kino is calling, so they know immediately who's calling, and like Craig said earlier also, hey, are you there? And that actually this reduced the service time also, and that's reduced the calling time. So overall, it was a very, very, very good experience for us with having. We were lucky to have First Orion on board with Kino, and yes, overall we could actually see decrease in resolution times, and customers actually less angry that like, oh, hey, I'm calling from, and the introduction, they immediately know, okay, it's Kino calling, and they just act upon it ASAP.
Yeah, so I guess it's, again, that idea of information going two different ways and being used holistically. Again, if we just go back to use that term once again, right? And to that end, Fiona, let's come back to you, because, excuse me, you're seeing there at Intuit, you're seeing some of the use of these tools and technologies in aiding the synergy between your teams and the cooperation between, say, your tier 1 and your tier 2 teams. Tell us a bit about how that information flow is going and how that's helping with that reduced resolution time as well.
Yeah, and we've been looking really at both process and technology. And just for context for everyone, the tax business, as you might guess, is a very, very seasonal business. So we can see our volume kind of somewhere between triple and quadruple almost overnight when tax season kicks off each year. And so because of that, we have kind of this inherent challenge where we have to build, a very high base of knowledgeable experts to talk with these professionals. And we have to do that kind of on a regular cycle. And we've seen a lot of success with moving to more of a kind of progressive training curriculum. And through that, this year, we've seen a 20% improvement in speed to proficiency. But even with that, big improvement, we still see in those early weeks for these new experts a very high level of reach out between tier 1 and tier 2. We've experimented with, a couple of different things. On the process side, we've looked at different ways to aid the tier 1. So whether that be kind of peer-to-peer community type support, one-on-one expert support. We've even utilized floor walking, which obviously kind of pre-COVID was probably more of a valid solution than it is right now when a lot of our workforce are at home. And then on the technology side, we've utilized kind of AI-based technology, AI-based chatbots to actually answer those questions before the tier 1 agent reaches tier 2. So to use intelligence and to kind of learn and grow in terms of what those key questions are coming in from tier 1 and answer those through the chatbot. And some of our business groups have actually seen up to 25% reduction in the level of handle time coming from tier 1 and tier 2, as a result of deploying that technology.
So it sounds like you're hitting it from both sides. On one hand, if you're reducing the likelihood of having to escalate in the first place, obviously that's quicker, but then that communication handoff and sharing is going to make that tier 2 interaction, is going to kick it into higher gear and get it going faster, right?
Yes, absolutely. And again, it's, thinking the same way about our agents as we do about our customers. It's getting them the answers, at their fingertips, without them leaving their workflow, breaking off to talk to someone else, getting them instantly.
Yeah, sure. And that kind of goes to that whole take care of your employees and they'll take care of your customers. It's literal. It's not just something that sounds nice to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, all right. Before we move on, I want to get to the question that Jonah has asked in the question box here. And it's just kind of maybe a palate cleanser as we move on to another topic here in a sec, but asking if younger customers prefer automated responses over the human responses. So let's just kind of go down the line, and we'll start with Aaron, and then Colin, and then back to Fiona, and we'll ask Craig and Prav at the end here. What are your thoughts, and are you noticing that younger folks are looking more for that self-heal or automated response? Aaron, what do you say?
We have a wide, diverse season ticket holder base and non-season ticket holder base in age and every sense of the word. So it is interesting to compare the demographics with how they traditionally would like to be communicated with. But what I'm seeing in general is, and traditionally in baseball, we have not always engaged our social media channels as a communication, phone, email, in person. But we have seen dramatically, and we've been changing our tune from a marketing standpoint. Instead of just pushing out messages on social media, we've been really, from a customer experience standpoint, listening on those channels and then incorporating them into our CRM system so that we can address any questions that come up. And they're generally quick questions. Even during a live event, we'll get majority younger, but also just across our entire fan base, they're just texting us. We have a fan text line during the game. They don't want to miss the action, so they're just doing everything from their mobile device, from their seat. And frankly, we don't want them to miss the action. So we are encouraging them to use our app and to communicate with us. We have something called the Fryer Bot. The swinging fryer is our mascot, and it's artificial intelligence through Satisfy. And if they have a question like, where's the closest beer, they will just pump out right away via chat box all the closest concession stands with beers. So, yes, we are trying to, I don't see a stark difference with the age, but we definitely are seeing an uptick in the quick automatic response and the need for information quickly.
Fantastic, kind of that it's going across the age demographics and everybody's kind of looking for that in the first place.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're encouraging it. Like I said, we're teaching the other demographics, hey, this is how you get digital tickets. And also you can get a lot of information and questions answered easily via the app. And we're doing loyalty programs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, great. By the way, before we move on to Colin's response to this too, I want to pop in here that Tanya puts in the question box, not a question, but a congratulations to Aaron on your upcoming nuptials, and I join her in that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. All right, Colin, what are your thoughts on this demographic as far as age, younger folks preferring the automated response? Is that what you're seeing as well?
Yeah, I would say generally that's, but I would be careful about generalizing too much. We do see tend to be more interested in using phone. So we do see a difference when it comes to phone. But I think the key when it comes to automated messaging is how it's designed. I think I found that older customers are just as much likely to get fulfillment out of using well-designed automated systems as anyone else. And I think where sometimes there's a gap is in how those systems are designed, because you kind of get a group thing going on sometimes where you have engineers and designers in a room, and many of them are above a certain, or sorry, I should say really under a certain age group, and they can kind of get into a bit of groupthink and make a lot of assumptions about what a user should understand about the design of a certain object, and they should understand how you can do X, Y, and Z, or how you can find how to navigate X, Y, or Z. And I think there in the assumptions is where you sometimes have issues, where those aren't not really assumptions that's fair to apply to the general population. And that can cause confusion among older users as to how to navigate some of these automated solutions. But if you really sit down and make sure that you're checking your assumptions, and you're not designing a system figuring that a customer can figure out where to find items that are not right in front of their face and otherwise hidden someplace, then I think, yes, if you have a very logical, well-defined system that's clear calls to action, then someone who is a quote-unquote older user would have just as much fulfillment in using that process as anything else, and they can have just as much success.
Yeah, and that UX is going to transcend demographics as well, as you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Fiona, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I should probably share, Nicholas, I'm the parent of a teenager, so it's very hard to ignore the fact that, there is a generation or generations coming through that, for whom picking up the phone is incredibly alien.
Yeah, you do that research right at home, huh?
I do indeed. But I would say, and I'm echoing some of the sentiment, I think, we do see trends between our online products, differences, a higher propensity in the online products to use, for example, chat versus phone versus our desktop products. But I do think there's a really important dimension. There's a cohort dimension. There's also a dimension which is, what is the nature of the question? And if you can present that effectively through the digital experience, people are likely, of any age, are likely to adopt that because you're making it so easy for them. But I think when you get into those more complex interactions, then, that's where across many generations you see a higher propensity to pick up the phone or just to want that human to human reassurance.
Absolutely. Craig, your technology is kind of that blend between a couple different channels, right? Because using your phone, you're going to have obviously the voice channel, but also the digital channel as well. What are your thoughts on this, and how does demographics play into that?
Well, much like Fiona, I've got, this will speak to my age, I've got 4 young adult children that often don't answer the phone unless I text them first and tell them I'm calling. So there is a little bit of an age difference, but I would say it's less age specific than it is use case specific. And I'll just use an example. It's hard to believe that it's only been about 10 years since Apple came out with their smartphone, and a lot of business professionals were used to a BlackBerry experience and a keyboard, but the technology was so good it was intuitive. And what our technology really does is make a phone call a digital experience. So there is a bit of an age difference, but taking the phone call down this path of being a digital experience makes a lot of difference. And I think all the other panelists said the same thing to some degree. It's use case specific. And there's no better experience to know that if I look at my own family. I have that experience with my young adult children, but I have a mother who's 78 that is just as savvy with social media and iPhone as any teenager. So I think we have to look at people as people and use cases and connect those together. And that was really what got us excited about the technology that we have in the marketplace. And we try to make it so intuitive and a digital experience that the phone call is really not a phone call anymore.
Yeah, and it sounds, Craig, that you could use some First Orion, sorry, you could use branding just for calls to your own family, it sounds like.
That's definitely a direction we're moving toward and making that live. And we have great ambitions. We want our technology to be used on every call, but we have the realization that happens when it has value, and that's what we're seeking to do. And then we're bringing that to brands first to be able to communicate to their consumers. But the more consumers see it and use it, what you just described is going to organically happen, Nicholas.
Yeah, Yeah, you bet. And you and Fiona both were talking about use cases, and I guess what it comes down to again then is when it comes to channel choice, and this will actually lead to that reduced resolution time that we're trying to accomplish as well, is what's the problem that this customer is trying to solve, and then what's the best channel then for that instance, right? And rather than just everything goes to this or that channel. Prab, let's get to you on this question as well before we move on to a closing here, because we're coming up towards the top of the hour. Prab, what are your thoughts on the demographics from an age perspective? Who's using what channel?
Yes, so to address on that, so right now we only have WhatsApp to start with. So what I feel that young people want to talk less when we call or WhatsApp. They just want to have that information ASAP, and even if it's a customer complaint, they just want a compensation quickly. You know what I mean? With respect to old people, they take their time they'll call, there'll be long calls, trying to understand, okay, how does the app work? Okay, what does this feature do? So I feel that, and even I would say same via message, that they'll have more questions than young people, and I think which is normal. Technology is something which I think young people, no offense to young people, take up quickly. And so yeah, that's that. So there's a difference between young and old people trying to use the technology and eventually having the questions on the channels.
Yeah, you bet. I guess once again, that overarching theme about meeting your customers where they are, answering the questions that they have, and solving the problem that they bring to you. That's fantastic. Running up against the top of the hour here, it's the bottom of the ninth, if you will, Aaron. I'd like to take a real quick moment before I toss back over to Scott to thank everybody. Prab, thank you so much. Fiona from Intuit, thanks a lot. Colin of Freshly, and Aaron Sheehan from the San Diego Padres. A special thanks to Craig Dunn from our sponsors, First Orion. Thanks to everybody who joined us on the call. Scott, are you there still?
I am indeed. And thank you for leading that discussion, Z. That, as Z said there, that wraps up our webinar for today. I know we raced through a lot, but I hope everyone found that as insightful as I did. I certainly learned a lot from the wealth of insights that were on offer today. To echo what Z had said, I'd like to thank each of our great panelists, Fiona, Colin, Erin, Craig and Prab, for lending us their time and expertise today. And of course, thank you to our ever-present moderator, Nicholas, for directing us through today's conversation. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, First Orion, for working with us to create this fantastic webinar. And of course, if you would like to check out what they have on offer and how it can benefit your business, please head over to www.firstorion.com or look out for more details attached alongside the recording that you will receive of the webinar today over the next few days. Finally, I'd like to thank everyone listening in for their great questions and interaction in the chat. You've asked some great questions and drove some great discussion this week. Up next from the Incite Group, we have some more great webinars and content pieces coming up in the next few weeks. And in addition to that, we will be celebrating our 10th anniversary of our Customer Service Summit USA this year, and we will shortly be announcing a very special event to mark that occasion. So do please keep an eye out for an update on those and ensure that you don't miss out. Like I say, the webinar recording will be fired over to your inbox in the next couple of days, so keep an eye out for that as well. And thank you from all of us at the Incite Group and Reuters Events, and we hope to see you again soon for another webinar.
Thanks, everyone.